In this video, I would like to speak briefly about a sentiment that I've been seeing take form, and I think that this specific subject deserves its just due. And in doing so, in discussing this particular phenomenon that I've recently encountered, and maybe some of you have as well, I'd like to segue into a bit of a different discussion. It's the same topic, but it's a different discussion, different part of the same topic. It's more of a bigger picture, if you will. And hopefully when I'm finished, this whole thing will make sense. So I've noticed that as the war in Ukraine rages on, calls for peace within Ukraine between the Ukrainians and, of course, the Russian regime are somehow no longer justified or justifiable, or are somehow insufficient. The people that call for peace in regards to this entire situation are wrong. You're on the side of Vladimir Putin and many other things that I'm blanking on right now. People are being said or are being said. And I want to read to you very quickly a statement from former President Donald Trump. He released his statement on April the 18th, and the statement goes as follows. It doesn't make sense that Russia and Ukraine aren't sitting down and working out some kind of an agreement. If they don't do it soon, there will be nothing left but death, destruction, and carnage. This is a war that never should have happened, but it did. The solution can never be as good as it would have been before the shooting started. But there is a solution, and it should be figured out now, not later when everyone will be dead. Wow, that's former President Donald Trump. You know what's funny about that statement? That's one of the best statements I've seen on this, one of the best perspectives I've seen since this entire thing unfolded. I mean, the sentiment that you've been getting from Western media, from many political leaders, the vast majority, if not all of them, and of course, many Americans as well that have been propagandized by the information that they've been receiving from the mainstream press. You know, it's nothing like this. It's no calls for peace. The calls for peace, as I stated in the beginning, are insufficient now. Now it seems like the calls for peace are being substituted for the defeat of Vladimir Putin and the Russian military. That's what it seems like the aim is these days. And of course, Donald Trump met opposition from this. Donald Trump's sure to meet any kind of opposition, no matter what he says. People have many, of course, justifiable, but some ridiculous grievances against the man. But that's an entirely different matter. But another man that came under harsh critique, pretty unwarranted critique, I would say personally, is Mr. Noam Chomsky. He had basically similar remarks as Donald Trump had to say here. He said there needs to be a diplomatic negotiated settlement between the parties involved. And there is a settlement that can indeed be reached, but U.S. policy diametrically opposes that settlement. And he quoted Mr. Chaz Freeman, the U.S. veteran diplomat, who said in an interview with Aaron Mate that on the Gray Zone that I suggest you seek out and watch. It's very informative, that the U.S. policy is seemingly to, and I quote, fight down to the last Ukrainian. And that's what U.S. policy is and continues to be. And that's what mainstream media and the politicians are supporting. And they're heralding around this fact and pretending as though the only way to get out of this, the only way to win this, is to somehow defeat Vladimir Putin and his army. And eventually have him thrust out of power, apparently, according to Joe Biden, with the regime change comment. It was apparently a Freudian slip. But look, man, the aims are clear. They're very clear. With the war going on in Ukraine, that's only like a surface level view of what's going on. In the grand scheme of things, Ukraine doesn't really matter. And I'm not saying that to somehow disrespect Ukraine. It's horrendous what's going on the ground there. You know, you see the pictures, the photos, the videos. It's extremely sad. War is a terrible thing. And it goes on in many different places. And this is just one of them. And the harsh treatment that these people, innocent people, have been subjected to is, of course, to the condemnable to the utmost. But if you look at what's going on outside of this, and what I'm referring to is this economic warfare that's being waged against Russia. And more specifically, U.S. policy in general, ever since this entire thing was jump-started, ever since the conception of Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. U.S. policy has been, as far as I see it, and many others have said the same, is to essentially beat down the Russian economy, the isolation of China, to make Europe more dependent on the U.S., as they have done, and try to keep U.S. hegemony and control, to not allow it to erode. Of course, hardly any of this is going the way of the U.S. and of the West. They're really accelerating what they're trying to stop, which is the rise of a new multipolar world involving the rise of China, of course, their ally Russia, India as well. India has been thrust into the fray by the U.S. themselves. Secretary Blinken recently saying that the U.S. is going to be looking into India's human rights abuses. That's a great one right there. India's human rights abuses. The U.S. is going to look into India's human rights abuses. And this is because of India's lack of towing the line for the U.S. in regards to adopting their same policy towards Russia due to their actions in Ukraine. But all of this is a part of a much larger ordeal in which we're witnessing before our very eyes a global shift, a global realignment of political, financial power. I mean, things are changing, things are shifting. The global center of capitalism is no longer in the confines of the United States. It's moved elsewhere. You know, you see statistics like the U.S. economy growing 2 to 3% a year over the last 20 years. The GDP, and in regards to the Chinese, their growth has been 6 to 9%, several times what the U.S. has been. And essentially, the actions in and around Ukraine are essentially just a veil to, of course, create some kind of, I was watching commentary on this, Professor Richard Wolff referred to this as a holy war of good and evil. We're supposed to believe that the Ukraine and who they're backed by is the good, and of course the Russian regime is the evil that the world is fighting against. And that's the understanding that most Americans have, and of course should have, in the mindset of Western leaders in regards to this issue. When in fact, it's so much more than that. And in conclusion, to really bring this all to an end, I want to read a statement from Barack Obama that I found in an article. This is from the Tribune. The U.S. blueprint actually goes back to 2014, within 3 months of the coup and regime change in Ukraine. Then President Barack Obama said in his famous speech addressing the cadets at West Point, "The United States is and remains the one and indispensable nation that has been true for the century past, and it will be true for the century to come. Russia's aggression towards former Soviet states unnerves capitals in Europe, while China's economic rise and military reach worries its neighbors. From Brazil to India, rising middle classes compete with us, and governments seek a greater say in global forums. It will be your generation's task to respond to this new world." Well, there it is. There it is. Obama laid it out for us in 2014. That's what this is about. A new world order is being created before our very eyes. In the U.S., the declining power, we've seen declining powers and ascending powers in the past. It's nothing new. It's doing everything within its power to, in fact, prevent this from happening. But as it does this, it is ironically accelerating this entire process. But something tells me that they know this.